Oh my gosh, we have come to the end of the Magic Wishing Chair. We are at the very last chapter, chapter 26. And today we're going to find out what happens with the Snoogle. Who are the characters? Molly? Try to beat me to it. Oh my gosh. What's the boy's name? Peter, Chingy, the Snoogle, and the Wishing Chair, correct? So let's see what happens to these guys. Are you calm? Oh, I just kicked the camera. Are you comfortable? Good. Okay. The name of it is the Snoogle's Castle. The children and Chingy carried the wishing chair down to the Snoogle's kitchen. This was a big bare stone place with a huge fire roaring in the grate. Chingy stood the chair down on the stone floor and sat in it, looking very gloomy. I know it was my fault that the wishing chair's wings were pecked off, he said to the others. Don't cry, Molly. There must be some way of getting out of Snoogle's castle. I'm not crying because I'm afraid we can't escape, said Molly. I'm crying because of the poor old wishing chair. Is this the end of all our flying adventures? It is horrible to think that we may never go any more. Don't think about that, said Chingy. The first thing is, can we possibly get out of here? Where is the Snoogle, I wonder? Here, said the quacking voice of the duck-headed Snoogle, and he looked into the kitchen. If you want any tea, there are cakes in the pantry, and you might make some tea and put some cakes on a plate for me, too. I suppose we might have to do what he says, said Peter. We went to the pantry and looked inside. There was a tin there that had cakes printed on it. Inside there were some fine chocolate buns. The children put some on a plate for themselves and some on a plate for the Snoogle. Molly put the kettle on the fire to boil. They all waited for the steam to come out, but nobody said a word. They were too unhappy. When the kettle boiled, Molly made tea in the two teapots. She took one teapot, cup and saucer, and plate of cakes to the Snoogle, who was sitting in the dining room reading a newspaper. It was upside down, so Molly didn't think it was much use to him, but she was too polite to say so. She couldn't help feeling, too, that it would be much better for all of them if they tried to be friendly with the Snoogle. She put a tray down by the Snoogle and left it for him. He opened his great beak before she was out of the room and gobbled up one cake after another. Molly thought he must have been a very greedy creature. She went back to the kitchen, and she and the others munched chocolate buns and drank hot tea, wondering gloomily what to do next. Perhaps we could swim across the moat, said Molly at last. We'll look and see. When we can creep away for just a few minutes, said Peter. Listen, said Chingy. What's that noise? Snore, snore, went Snoogle in the dining room. The three looked at one another. What about poking all around to see if there's a way to escape now, whispered Peter. Come on then, said Chingy. They all got up. They went to the kitchen door and opened it. It looked straight onto the moat. How wide and deep and cold it looked. Oh, said Molly, I'll never be able to swim across that, I'm sure. Nor would you, Peter. And look, said Chingy, pointing down into the water. There are giant frogs there. They would bite us, I expect. I think that's a funny thing to be in a moat. Sure enough, as Molly and Peter peered down into the water, they saw the blunt snouts of many giant frogs. Oh, said Molly, I'm not going to jump in there. There we go. There's the giant frogs. Chingy, Molly, Peter. I say, said Peter, what about the drawbridge? Couldn't we let it down and escape that way? Of course, said Chingy. Come on, we'll find it before the old Snoogle wakes up. Then they went through the kitchen and the big, wide hall. They swung open the great front door. A path led down to the gateway that looked over the moat. The door of the gateway was the drawbridge drawn up over the entrance. The three ran down to the gate. Chingy looked carefully at the chains that held up the drawbridge. "Look," he said to the other, "these chains are fastened by a padlock." Did you hear that? I think it's a gecko behind Buns' cage. The drawbridge cannot be let down unless the key is fitted into the padlock and the lock is turned. Then the drawbridge will let down over the moat. "Where is the key to the padlock, I wonder," said Molly. "What do you guys think? Where do you think the key is?" "I have an idea." "I know," said Peter. "The Snoogle has it. I saw a big key hanging from him somewhere." "Can we get it?" asked Molly. "He's asleep. Let's try." They tiptoed into the dining room. The Snoogle was certainly fast asleep. "I guess we can get the key without waking him," whispered Chingy in delight. "Where is it?" They looked all around the Snoogle for the key, but they couldn't see it, and at last Peter saw it, or part of it. The Snoogle was sitting on it. They could just see the head of the key sticking out from underneath him. "No good," said Chingy, shaking his head and tiptoeing out. "We should certainly wake him. We would wake him if we tried to pull that key out, and he's sitting on it. I suppose that's why he sat on it, to stop us from getting it. Anyway, I expect the drawbridge would have made an awful noise rattling down on its chain," said Peter gloomily. "The Snoogle would have heard it and woken up and come after us." "What shall we do now?" said Molly in despair. "We can't swim the moat. We can't unlock the drawbridge and let it down. But there's one thing we can try," said Chingy. "I might try to whistle one of the birds down to a windowsill and tell it of our dreadful fix. It would fly back to Pixieland, and perhaps the king would send rescue for us. You never know." "Yes, do that," said Molly, cheering up. The children and the pixie went to the stairs and into a bedroom. They leaned out of the open window, and below lay the silvery moat. Chingy began to whistle. I can't whistle very good. Can you whistle? That's as good as I can do. It was a soft whistle, but a very piercing one. Molly felt sure that if she had been a bird, she would have come and answered Chingy's whistle. Chingy stopped his whistling. He looked anxiously into the sky and waited, but no bird came. No bird was to be seen. "I'll try again," said Chingy. He whistled once more. Can you whistle better than that? Maybe. They waited, looking everywhere for the sign of a bird, but there were no birds in Snoogle country, said the pixie with a sigh. One would have come if it could. "Well," said Molly, looking worried, "whatever can we do now? There doesn't seem to be any way of escaping at all, nor any way of getting people to help us. Let's go into each of the rooms upstairs and downstairs and see if there's anyone there," said Chinky. "We might find a servant or someone that could help us. You never know." So the children of the pixie went into each room one by one. They were strange, untidy rooms. It looked as if Snoogle lived in one for a bit, and then, when it became too untidy, went into another one and then lived in there, and then the same thing happened. There was no one at all in any of the rooms. Only Snoogle lived in the castle. That was for sure. "We've been in many fixes," said the pixie gloomily, "but this seems to be the tightest fix we've ever been in. How I hate the Snoogle for pecking the wings off of our dear wishing chair." The children and Chingy went down into the kitchen again. The Snoogle was no longer snoring in the dining room. "He must be awake," he said. He came into the kitchen, snapping his duck beak and waving his cat tail. "Well," he said with a grin, "been all over the castle to find a way to escape. Aha! You won't find that in a hurry. Well, as you're here, you may as well wait on me. I'm tired of doing my own cooking and washing up. You can do it for me." "We won't, then," said Peter furiously. "It's bad enough to have to be here without waiting on a duck-headed creature like you." Hush, Peter, said Molly suddenly. Hush. Very well, Snoogle. We will do as you say. Where would you like your supper? There is a cloth in the drawer, but it is dirty. Have you a clean one so that I can begin to set up your supper for you? You are a sensible girl, said the Snoogle, pleased. I have a clean cloth upstairs. I'll go get it. He went out of the room, and Chinky and Peter turned and stared at Molly in amazement. What did she mean by giving in so meekly to the horrible Snoogle? Peter, Chinky, look, said Molly, as she pointed to the wishing chair where it stood in the corner of the kitchen. The others looked, and whatever do you suppose that she saw? Guess. The wishing chair has grown new wings. Yes, really. Tiny red buds were forming on its wings. They grew fast. They burst into feathers. They were growing into new, strong wings. Goodness, said Peter and Chinky, amazed. Who would have thought of that? Good old wishing chair. Quick, here comes the Snoogle. Put the chair behind the table where he can't see its wings growing, said Molly, so Chinky pushed it behind the table just in time. The Snoogle pattered in and held out a clean cloth to Molly. Thank you, said the little girl politely. And have you got some egg cups, please? I will boil you some eggs for supper. The Snoogle trotted out to fetch some egg cups. As soon as he was gone, Molly, Peter, and Chinky crowded into the wishing chair. Home as quickly as you can, wishing chair, home, shouted Chinky. The chair flapped its new red wings and rose into the air. The Snoogle came running into the kitchen. He quacked with rage. He tried to get a hold of the chair as it flew past him, and Chinky kicked out at him and caught him on his big yellow beak. The Snoogle gave a squawk and sat down suddenly. Goodbye, goodbye, dear Snoogle, yelled Chinky, waving his hand. Do call us and see if when you're passing, and we'll give you a clean cloth for tea and boil you some eggs. The chair flew home at a great rate. At last it came to the playroom and flew into it. It set itself down on the floor, and its wings gave one more flap and vanished. Ha! The old wishing chair is tired, said Chinky. I don't wonder. I hope it will soon grow its wings again so that we can have more adventures. Where's Mother's ring, Chinky? Asked Peter, suddenly remembering why they had gone adventuring. They had to get their mother's ring. Here you are, said Chinky, and gave Peter the ring. Won't your mother be pleased? She won't guess what a lot of adventures we've had getting back her ring for her. Peter and Molly ran off happily. They called their mother and they gave her the ring. You had dropped it in the garden, Mother, said Peter. Thank you. You are kind children to find it for me, said Mother. But she didn't guess that Big Ears the Goblin had stolen it and that the Snoogle had it too. No, that was the children's secret. And that is the end of this book. Now, normally tradition is to throw the book, but this is such an old and special book belonging to my mom when she was a child. Well, maybe. That I'm just going to do this. And that is the end of our Read Aloud. Thank you guys for coming in and watching this. This is like our 30-something time that I recorded it and you watched it and answered the questions. It wasn't as good as doing it in person, but I think I had a lot of fun and I hope you did. And we'll sign off by saying be kind to your families, and I will see you soon.